All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Project NextMRO Ask Me Anything with Defense Innovation Unit and the Program Executive Office for Manpower, Logistics, and Business Solutions. Good morning to those on the West Coast, good afternoon to the folks on the East, and thank you for joining us. And again, welcome to the Project NextMRO Ask Me Anything. My name is John Falcone. I am a project manager supporting the DIU Maritime portfolio, and I'll be emceeing this AMA for the next hour alongside Mr. Chris Sharon, Program Manager, Naval Maintenance, Repair, and Overhaul, NAVC-06. So before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. One, this webinar is being recorded. Your mics will be muted throughout the presentation. We'll begin with a short primer on the challenge and then leave a significant portion of the AMA to be to a dedicated Q&A session. Please submit your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the video. We'll do our best to work through as many of these as possible, but as you can imagine, there's going to be quite a number coming through. So please recognize that we're going to prioritize questions that are most applicable to the general audience. Chris and I are going to be coordinating backstage with our panel of experts from Fleet Forces, OpNav, NAVSEA, NAVAIR, and others to identify the best voice to speak to your questions. So if there is a short delay between questions, please recognize it's probably us attempting a large coordination effort with folks who are off camera. And for questions that are not answered, our plan is to download the chat log and prioritize the questions with our mission partners. And on our solicitation page, the announcement page where it showed up on diu.mil, we'll update the frequently asked questions section as appropriate. So the presentation portion of this session will cover an executive summary of the challenge, followed by high-level introductions of the organizations involved. And then we'll get to framing out the context of the challenge and the announcement. Our expectation is that folks have read through the announcement prior to this call, so we will not be rehashing all the functional and technical details. However, we recognize that the project scope, timeline, and evaluation criteria were of highlighted interest based on many of your survey responses. So we're going to touch upon those. And with that, I'll kick it over to Chris with an introduction of his organization.
Okay, thanks for joining us today. Very excited to get started with this NextMRO project in partnership with DIU. So PEO MLB, Program Executive Office for Manpower, Logistics, and Business Systems, is a part of the NAVWAR Systems Command. I work for NAVC-06, and the reason that is that this system is Navy-wide. It crosses maritime, aviation, shipyards, aviation depots, literally every sailor, marine, or shipyard worker that performs maintenance, manages maintenance, supervises maintenance, is impacted by the system. So the PEO MLB program office, PMW 200, is the PMO for this system. But what you'll find in working with us is that there's people working from NAVWAR, NAVAIR, NAVSEA, NAVSUP, various program offices across the Navy. And, PEO MLB provides business solutions to sailors. This isn't the only one. They have several portfolios. Within this PMW 200 portfolio, we work on this MRO system, a supply system, a product lifecycle management system, an integrated data environment system, as well as the existing systems and applications that currently service the Navy across all the various commands, that I mentioned before. So PEO MLB is perfectly situated across the Navy to have that reach with what I'll call a neutral and unbiased perspective. And they draw in experts like from NAVSEA and the other SysComs to help make sure this program is built with the right requirements and performs, adequately to meet everyone's needs.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Chris. For the most part, I assume many on the call are familiar with DIU, but for those of you who this might be your first interaction with us, first off, welcome. We're excited that you're joining us for this AMA, and we want you to know us as both a source of information and opportunities to accelerate your commercial technologies into the military. On the screen, you can see our footprint across the country to include both our primary offices and our on-ramp hubs. And then probably the easiest way for many of you to engage with us is via our website, our digital presence, monthly webinars, company intake forms, and then general acquisition resources to become more familiar with how to work with DIU. Now kind of getting more into the meat of the presentation. So the challenge overview. As you saw in our announcement, this project is aimed at modernizing the Navy's maintenance, repair, and overhaul system. For those who've served in maintenance roles in the Navy or probably other places in the military, you're familiar with the pain point. Sailors are using siloed systems for preventative maintenance, part ordering and management, operational reporting, etc., increasing the administrative burden placed on them. By effectively modernizing the MRO system, your teams can help increase asset availability for warfighting, optimize schedules, predict failures before they occur, and ensure the availability of these systems across a range of operational environments and conditions. Based on the survey responses, there were a number of questions related to the defined maintenance levels, and I'll hand the mic back over to Chris to provide a little bit more insight into these levels as defined by the Navy, because some of the language that you might be familiar with from commercial industry have parallels, but not an exact mapping in the Navy. So I kick it over to Chris for a little bit more clarification.
So, you know, in commercial industry, you'll hear the terms field and depot, I think, more commonly. The Navy has a third level, and it can be nuanced, but organizational level, you could equate to field level, free and clear. Depot level, you could equate to depot level, just like you would in the commercial realm. Intermediate level is different depending on whether or not you're talking about aviation or maritime. Intermediate level for maritime, you'd be referring to regional maintenance centers, repair facilities, whereas with aviation, you'd be talking about IMAs, intermediate maintenance activities, or on a ship, you might have an AIMD department, Aviation Intermediate Maintenance Department. So the point of where the mission's taking place, you know, and a part needs to be replaced or something needs to be repaired, you call that in the field, but in some cases, they have intermediate maintenance level facilities available there on site to assist in those repairs. And that's where there's a difference. So for the purpose of the white paper, we'd like to draw attention to the three various levels, but provide with these definitions so that it can help you understand, you know, where you map to. So I'll put it plainly. Field level for maritime would be O level. For aviation, it would be O and I level. Depot level for maritime would be I and D level. And for aviation, it would be D level. So just if you're struggling with how to connect those things, that's how we look at it here. But otherwise, I would encourage you to try to explore the three different definitions that we provided. And there's examples to help you understand them even further. That's all I've got, John.
Great, thank you. So again, a couple questions that we received were based on the challenge timeline as posted in the announcement. So on the screen is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 with certain dates associated with it. And I'm just going to try it again to provide like the plain language translation. Phase 1 is an evaluation of the white paper solicitation. So based on those white papers, and that's what really primarily we're focused on providing clarification around during this AMA. Based on those white papers, we'll down select to a smaller group to participate in phase 2. The vendors that are chosen to participate in phase 2 will be provided by the Navy use cases or more, more ground truth. It's like stories from a day in the life of a Navy sailor who's conducting aviation maintenance or conducting ship system maintenance. So use cases, otherwise known as kind of like a day in the life of a maintainer. And during that phase 2, what we want vendors to be doing is demonstrating how their off-the-shelf product would handle those user stories. Another round of down selects will occur from that demo, And then in phase 3, the selected vendors will be provided actual Navy data to stress test their solution. And we expect to follow the timeline listed on the slide on your screen. No later than November 7th, we want to get back to you all with the results of the white paper solicitation and that down select process, at which point we will distribute those day in the life stories, be given approximately a month in order to prepare those use case demonstrations based on your off-the-shelf product. And then again, turning around no later than the week of December 19th, who was down selected and will be participating in phase 3, where more information will be provided by the Navy to include that data that will stress test your systems. Phase 3, final demonstrations being conducted mid to end January, with solution winners being announced after that. Moving on, the authority we are leveraging for this prize challenge, we define the statutory authority used for awarding prizes, and we want to highlight, particularly on the right side of the screen, what we can use this prize authority for. And one of the main things, and I understand probably one of the biggest carrots for the vendors participating in this prize challenge, is that this challenge meets the competitive requirements to allow for follow-on FAR or OTA contracts to be awarded directly to the winners. Finally, the last part I want to touch upon, and then we'll kick it over to the Q&A chat, is the judging criteria particularly for phase 1. Again, this is pulled right from the announcement. The 3 primary categories that we are judging on is technical viability and alignment, innovation, team and company viability. When we're using these like kind of broad categories, but within each of these paragraphs, you see like how are you aligned to the problem statement and the desired outcomes that we discussed earlier in this presentation. Based on if you are getting after the maritime OI or D level or aviation OI and D level, how are you meeting the required capabilities as listed, both functional and technical? How do you address those, and how convincingly do you address those in your white paper to include your past experience working with, whether it be the military or it be with commercial fleets? Draw that parallel as clearly as possible to how, if you have not worked with the military previously, how your commercial experience parlays directly to the military environment. I think a good example that we've heard is one of the technical requirements is to be able to operate in a DDIL or a denied comms environment. And although that might sound very military operational, some of the vendors might have an MRO solution for the oil and gas industry, where folks who are out servicing platforms, they only have 15 minutes of connectivity once every couple of days. So again, it's not necessarily, don't think that just because your commercial experience again is only in the commercial sector, that there aren't parallels to be drawn to the military. What I do ask though in your white paper is that you clearly define those and help us connect the dots on how your commercial solution and best practices is applicable in the military context. The other point of clarification, and I'm pretty sure I already saw it scroll up in the Q&A section, was that there's an error in the submission form that contradicts the submission requirements and the body of the announcement. So we are asking for a maximum of a 10-page white paper for phase 1. Please ignore the text in the submission block that says 5 pages is the maximum. So again, like to reiterate, the submission requirements is what's defined in the body of the announcement, which is a 10-page maximum for that white paper. With that, I'm going to kick over to the Q&A portion. And while Chris begins to scan the chat and identify the appropriate technical expert, I'm going to open up the session with a question that we received on the survey that I think was just going to be of good general interest. And so I just want to address it immediately. So the question we received on the survey response was, at what point in this process must a vendor be able to support data in the IL6 environment? Is this a must-have to apply to this challenge? Or is that an IL 4 to 6 requirement, a production environment need? And the clear answer to that is IL 4 will be required for the phase 3 demonstration. aisle 5 and 6 would be for production. And with that, I kick it over to Chris to bring up our next question.
So can we bring up Kyle? Kyle has one that he's ready to answer.
All right. So one of the first questions that popped out is this looking at increasing the effectiveness of data and not a complete overhaul of all aviation and maritime maintenance and supply systems. So the key thing that we want to ask industry is bring your innovative solutions to tackle what's listed in the prize challenge for maintenance. We want to get faster, we want to get better, and that includes how we use our data, but also what are those industry best practices for performing maintenance that we could adopt that are a part of your software solution. So there's the yes and approach to this. We want to rapidly accelerate and get better at maintenance, and we want to leverage your tool set to do it. So please, please, please bring in things and inform us how to do stuff better from an industry perspective. Back to you, Chris. Anything to add?
So I'm going to go through a couple of easy ones at the bottom. I have my experts looking at several others, and once I get responses from them, we'll come over to that side. Will pricing need to be submitted with the white paper? No, we're not looking for you to prepare a bid. We are interested in your business model. How do you intend to charge the government? Is it licensing? Is it by head? Is it by site? Those sorts of details would be helpful, but not looking for you all to compete with your dollar value prices at this point. What other systems environments will NextMRO need to operate with? Craig, it's a kind of a vague. I'd love to answer this question because NextMRO, and maybe I'll do it justice just by riffing. NextMRO will need to operate with ships, with squadrons, with depot facilities, with shore sites, and IL 4 through IL 6 environments, with submarine and carrier related information, of a sensitive nature, and all those environments. Just think wherever the Navy has maintenance being performed that is planned, scheduled, recorded, reported, and used as reference for future, sustainment of parts and equipment and capital assets. That's where the MRO system will be. So if you can imagine all those different environments across the Navy, it's pretty much anywhere in any environment, including disconnected operations as needed. I want to go over to aviation. Paul, why don't you jump in and answer the question that you suggested? Read the question and then go over the answer.
Which one do you want me to answer there, Chris?
The one you recommended.
Regarding API documentation?
API documentation. As far as UMA and OIMA, I believe that the web services will be provided. I am not too sure about the Avana and the R supply, but currently our UMA database talks to R supply via the OIMA web services. So I believe that's a mute point at this point. So as far as our supply outward, I don't believe that's something we can provide on our side. It's probably going to have to come from the supply folks.
Chris, I think the operable question, the operable question here might be for the purposes of the demonstration, or sorry, for the demonstration of the prize challenge, will the API documentation be necessary? And then, this is probably more a conversation of what will production look like. So in terms of, who asked this question, will vendors receive API documentation for Navy logistics and readiness systems? What we are looking for in the white paper portion of this process is for you to describe past instances of integration with third-party data sources. And so think about what those examples might be from commercial industry or what you have done previously in the Navy. Whether when we get to like specific Navy systems, that is a conversation that we have with our selected vendors to ensure we are providing all the information that is required for them to be successful. But again, to reiterate, for the purposes of the white paper, please highlight your past experiences leveraging and integrating third-party data.
Thanks, John. Let's go to Mike Davis next on some aviation questions. Go ahead and read the question, Mike, and then go ahead with your answer afterwards.
So in backstage chat, there was a question about what are the must pass outcomes per domain. I'll only answer for aviation. There are must have demoed capabilities that are required, and I think as would start with what's in the AOI solicitation. I would say that the examples given, aviation related, so safer flight release, redistribution or transfer of aircraft, and there are depot overhaul milestones. So yeah, at this point there are must-have demonstrated capabilities that are required. Over.
Thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Kyle. You can take the next one.
All right. The additional question is, how will the government define authoritative source of truth for maintenance and supply data across our OI and D levels? There are two other functional areas that the MRO solution will interface with. One is our supply chain management system, which includes enterprise resource planning, ERP, and the Naval Operational Supply System, where they are modernizing to S/4HANA. So that will be one interface. The key goal here in the price challenge area of interest is using modular open source architecture and modern interfaces. So that's the key goal for your solutions, is to use that architecture to bridge between these other authoritative sources of truth. That's the supply system solution. The technical data and ship configuration information, including drawings and condition-based maintenance information, that is in our Navy product lifecycle management portfolio, which has an instance on aviation PLM using Team Center. And then we have model-based product support on our maritime system using PTC Windchill. And those are the digital backbones for your supply and your ship and weapon configuration information. MRO will provide the maintenance details and tracking. Okay, back to you, Chris.
There's several questions about APIs and during the prize challenge versus during and I just want to I think speak for a second about the boundaries of the system, just to maybe answer a few questions. So the NextMRO system is being looked at as a solution, that provides the capabilities that are written about in the AOI. It's not being looked at as a hardware solution. It is being looked at as a solution that would provide some mobility capability. Like if a tablet were provided, you would have the capability to provide, some sort of application that would exist on that tablet. If the infrastructure were provided, your system would provide the capability to operate in a disconnected state for some period of time. The infrastructure, as well as the the data transmission, translation, transformation between systems, between legacy systems and this system, you can all expect is a given, and that you will communicate to that via a common standard API, which will be defined and provided to you, but not during the prize challenge period. So I think that answers a few questions pretty broadly, but Mike, do you want to jump in?
Chris, I'll hop in and highlight a couple of questions that I see like being pretty similar thematically. So I'm going to read out two questions that I have, and there's a couple that have jumped off of these. So one part is what time frame for data freshness, real time, near real time, batch is acceptable? Is there a desire to utilize edge devices like drones for automated hull and aircraft inspection? How would this video be processed, right, et cetera? Again, questions about data freshness. I think like really overall, what we want to highlight is that, we do not want to tell you the answer. To like a very real extent, right? We have broadly defined the challenge that, the Navy and sailors are facing. Through your white paper, make your argument based on what your tools available are of why that solution is the most appropriate for solving the problem that we have stated. It's hard to say that, depending on, for instance, if we're not currently using some sort of device for automated hull and aircraft inspections, to have like a defined requirement around that is not what we are looking to do. Tell us how you are going to bring your solution on board. Tell us what that data looks like, right? That if it is real time, highlight that. If it's near real time, highlight that. But what we don't want to do is like define the requirements for commercial best practices that we might not be aware of or we might not be utilizing today. So, again, I'm going to highlight that that's like a theme across all of these. Hey, this is our capability kind of looks like this. Is this sufficient? Does this meet the mark? Utilize the white paper and provide evidence on why it should meet the mark and why it solves our problem. Chris, you have another one lined up on deck?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer. I think there was a question about the thing that I mentioned. Someone asks for clarity, is this strictly seeking a software solution or are hardware solutions, e.g. streamlined inspection systems, part of this? And must the proposed solution satisfy all requirements, or will DIU facilitate teaming across multiple solutions? So I will address the first part of that, and John, you can take the second part. So the software solution will interface with systems that are involved in inspection of other systems. This solution is the user interface for the supervisor, the maintainer, the inspector of maintenance execution, not of the system being maintained per se, but of the planning to do maintenance on such systems across whatever activity or site maintenance is being looked at as a thing. It can interface with, like there was a statement in our AOI about preventative and predictive maintenance and being able to provide an ability to connect to sensor systems. Your system won't be the sensor system, but if it can use the data from a sensor system to help inform maintenance, that would be, where that software solution, does connect to a hardware inspection capability. I hope that's adding better clarity for you. And then John, can you address the second part about teaming? Absolutely.
So again, as addressed in the solicitation, we do encourage teaming and partnerships. If on your own, right, you have not identified partners, please, again, submit your white paper, clearly defining the scope that you are addressing. So for instance, if your primary focus is on maritime field level, so that organizational level, just highlight that in your executive summary for your white paper. If it is a compelling solution, both DIU and Log IT has the ability to suggest additional partnerships that we think might meet the full need of the announcement. So again, partnerships, teaming, definitely encouraged for this. The other question I'll grab from the chat before we kick it over back to our technical panel is, once a vendor is, Fonzie asked, once a vendor is awarded in phase 3, what is the expected implementation live date goal for the Navy, and how will the project rollout occur? So like I kind of alluded to, so this is a prize challenge. In total, there'll be a distribution of $8.5 million across the various phases and the demonstration events. Upon conclusion of that, Log IT has the right to use that prize challenge as that competitive mechanism in order to go to a follow-on FAR-based or OT contract. If that were to occur, right, let's say you successfully demonstrate your solution during phase 3, you are identified as the winner of the challenge, and then we are going to roll into, let's say a prototype OTA, just for conversation's sake. Right, at that point, you would be issued a request for a prototype proposal, in which you would then come back to us with the statement of work, your planned objectives. And that's going to be a document that's going to be created with the contracting team, with the program management team, to make sure we are aligned. So for the purposes of again, phase 1 and the white paper, Fonzie, describe where you guys are ready, right? If you are ready on, let's call it February 1st to go live with the Navy, highlight that, make that clear. If you think that, hey, there's going to be additional engineering required and it's going to take approximately 4 to 5 months potentially to be able to go live, right? Again, state it clearly in the white paper. So, again, this is me in some regards, is how do you make yourself most valuable and how do you make yourself most attractive to the evaluation panel? Be very clear how your company and your team is going to deliver a solution that is going to solve the problem. And with that, back over to Chris.
Thanks, John. So I want to turn it over to Mike Davis. And Mike, if you want to have Mark or Glenn to jump in on either of the questions, defer to you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to address the question, what will be the authoritative source for core data? So the example given, bill of materials, bill of process, et cetera, necessary to produce efficient maintenance schedules, work orders, to facilitate corrective and predictive maintenance. So aviation's answer to that one is bill of materials, bill of process, maintenance schedules from PLM, work orders from MRO. Predictive maintenance would come from what we call it's like an off-aircraft data viewer, and aviation we refer to those as ground stations. Some of them are OEM provided, some of them are government developed products. Over.
Right here, I have a question that I'd like my functional experts to weigh in on in their own words, and it's okay to be a little unscripted. I'd like the audience to get a sense of what the solution means to you, because as we all know, the solution isn't necessarily the same to each one of the functional stakeholders. So the question was, are you looking for a complete solution or looking at different components that could be integrated with other solutions? And I don't want to be too verbose, but Chris Clark, can you take it first, and then we can pass over to Mike Davis, and if Tim's on, we go to Tim, and then to Nick and Jasmine.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yep.
Okay, I'm having trouble on my end with low bandwidth. I think the answer is both. If there was a one-stop solution for everything, we'd go with that. If there's multiple pieces that can meet all of our capabilities, that integrates well and reduces the swivel chair problem that we have today, that would also be satisfactory as well. But that's our biggest problem at the O level, is the amount of swivel chairing we do between the various applications to accomplish maintenance. Over.
Thanks, Chris. I don't think I see Tim say there. So Nick Allen, do you want to say a few words for shipyard depot perspective?
I can. I don't know if y'all. All right. Yeah, I think the depots are really looking for piece parts, things to fill in gaps that we currently have in our existing suite of apps. Although I will say that if a solution overlaps with something we're currently doing, I don't think we're above looking at consolidating, multiple apps into one. Over.
Thanks, Nick. And then Mike Davis, I don't know if you want to farm it out to your various SMEs, or if you want to address it all. Over to you.
Yeah, I've got a group here with me. We're looking for a system that will document our maintenance, obviously interface with a lot of existing products. I will add that this product has very large shoes to fill, and we're looking for world class, but also out of the box. So you guys have a really big task ahead of you to satisfy our requirements and our unique business rules and business processes. We're willing to change, but we've got a lot of sailors and Marines that we have to keep safe at the same time. Over.
Thanks, Mike. So that was maritime O level, and then maritime D level, and then aviation sort of OI and D level together. I'll chime in with the question that Aaron asked and that someone else double clicked. Is the effort looking to include technologies that can improve collection of maintenance or repair data, or will it be bounded to only utilizing data resident in the existing log IT systems? And the answer resoundingly is the former. The former, with the understanding that the latter, jumping into an ecosystem that is live and ongoing and satisfies, countless sites and users, is a unique position for it to fit into and challenging. But does the Navy want to improve how it does maintenance and learns from maintenance? Absolutely, yes. And that's specifically, one of the reasons why, we enjoyed meeting DIU, this process, seeing how it connects us to a broader array of solutions that could be potentially something that would really help advance the Navy in performing maintenance in a more efficient, smarter, ultimately creating a situation where all of our ships and planes and other sites create more availability, more readiness, more attention on the mission, versus people trying to figure out how to navigate their way through various systems. So the smarter that we can become in the use of the data, as well as in the use of the system around the data, is something we're all ears, eyes wide open, looking forward to hearing, what you have to propose in those regards. John, do you have anything you want to jump in with?
Yeah, Chris, kind of tagging off of that, a similar question that kind of came through from Hayes said, can you share all the systems that you use today that users currently have the swivel chair for? But what I really think Chris was highlighting in his answer, and I think it's the main point that want to continue to drive home is that to a certain extent, like we want to understand what the best practices in commercial industry are. How are your commercial off-the-shelf technologies servicing that analogous situation in the commercial sector? So, you know, I can only speak, you know, a former sailor myself, you know, if I was performing maintenance on a ship, for instance, and I needed to get after my technical documentation, I would go to one service that was web-based, for instance. When I was looking to plan my preventative maintenance, that was another standalone system that existed. If that preventative maintenance kicked off corrective maintenance or then led to the need to identify parts, again, another system. And then when I needed to let all my bosses know about the problem that we were having on board, once again, that was another system. So although, like, you know, I didn't necessarily rattle off every single system that applies, and Chris can correct me, I think the answer is between like 20 and 30. Like there's a significant number. I use that as kind of like a highlight of like a user story in order to suggest like these are the things that do exist in siloed systems today. If the best path forward is like preventative and corrective maintenance to be in a single application, because that's how you're seeing, you know, name your commercial fleet provider doing it. That's what we want to hear about in the white paper. Back to you, Chris.
Well, I don't know if there's any obvious ones. I know there's a lot of questions about use cases and what phase 2 is going to be like and what phase 3 is going to be like. And forgive me, you know, getting too far ahead of the schedule is not somewhere I'd like to be in this call, because I don't want everyone to get a leg up on each other. Some of you are a lot more experienced than others, and both phases will be sufficiently challenging for different reasons. And we will have all of the information that is needed, you know, at the time when we're ready to, you know, release that to everybody all at once. But phase 1 is our intent focus for now. Someone earlier asked about links. What the evaluators are going to look at is what you put in the 10 pages, how well you address, you know, the AOI up against the evaluation criteria that we call out, and what you choose. Like, we understand 10 pages isn't a typical FAR-based RFP 100-page. You know, it's challenging to figure out exactly what nuggets of information you think are the most compelling to make your solution stand out. Do you have to be a solutions provider, you know, that's been living in this field for, you know, your company's entire existence? No. You know, and if there's companies out there that are great at something, we want to hear you come tell us about that. So that's something I just want to impress upon everybody. We understand there's a spectrum of expertise and experience. And if you have, you know, interest in the Navy and building a relationship in the MRO space with us, put your foot out there and let's see what happens. I think it's worth the effort. You know, in my past life, I've written proposals, and I know 10 pages isn't nothing, but it's also, you know, it's not going to keep you here on the next few nights and weekends. And we didn't really give you that much time anyways. But I really hope that this was enough information for you to fill in some holes, to encourage you to take it the next step. And then, John, over to you. And I'm going to just watch the chat and see if anybody wants to jump in to clarify any points before we wrap up.
No, that's great. I kind of like laid out just maybe like a couple themes from the conversation to this moment, right? And the two of those themes is commercial best practices, right? Like plain and simple, bring it. I would, you know, encourage you to articulate where it has worked, why it has worked, and why you think that it is an applicable solution in the military context. Make that as clear as possible. So commercial best practices, yes, absolutely, bring those to bear. Bunch of questions around the technical requirements. We do recognize that there are many of these listed, but please do address them all and draw the appropriate analogies to the commercial landscape. So I use the DDIL example just because I think it's clean between the two. But just because you haven't deployed in a DDIL environment in the military context, right, doesn't mean that there's not an analogous storyline for you to share in your white paper here. And then two housekeeping items that come up in the questions a bit. From a process standpoint, yes, you are allowed to partner on multiple submissions, right? But what I will highlight is that if you are partnering on multiple submissions, you need to be able to do the work for the follow-on phases if you are selected as part of those multiple teams. So, I think the question specifically was, hey, we're a small business looking to partner with multiple people, right? Just make sure you're not overextending yourself. For both phase 2 and 3, we will be supplying that data. We will be, so phase 2, we'll be providing the user stories. Phase 3, we will be providing that Navy data to stress test your systems. If you're a vendor that does not have their own environment, right, please highlight that. That is not a requirement for moving forward from phase 1. But please make it aware to us if you are going to, if you would require the use of the Navy's environment upon receiving that data. And then the last part was there was a note about how do you access the recording after the meeting. When we do have a video link, I will respond to all calendar invite attendees to provide that link. So if you had this forwarded to you from somebody else within your organization, and I don't have you as an attendee based on that survey response, reach out to that person because they're the email address that I have collected, and so that's who I will forward it out to. All right. And as I mentioned, these other questions in here, we'll do our best to kind of group them together as it makes sense, but also as it's pertinent to solving the phase 1 questions. Chris, any final words from you?
Yeah, I think one thing just in case it doesn't come through clearly in the AOI. The program will be operating under the DoD Instruction 5000.87 software acquisition pathway. Someone asked about, how quickly, the system would be deployed or introduced or implemented. If you become familiar with that instruction, while this NextMRO is envisioned as a COTS-oriented solution, and that instruction would be looked at as like a custom software development sort of supporting policy or guideline. We will be implementing features in a scaled agile framework structure cycle, like you would developing software and introducing features that are custom. So try to wrap your head around that. I mean, it's not, it's once you read it, I think you'll understand that, it's an additional challenge, but I think if anyone's familiar with the Navy's desire to see capability delivered and being leveraged in an operational environment, at the hands of the sailors, supporting them, adding value to their mission. If we can do that, a set of features at a time versus having them wait for prolonged periods of time for, let's say, the whole thing, the Navy is more interested in something that is more immediate and often, and it's not going to be easy, but that I think will answer a couple of the questions that I saw in the chat as well. And that's all I have. Really appreciate everyone's interest. And unless there's anything else from me or the team over here, John, we'll just stand by. Thanks, everybody.